Hello, welcome back to Dr. How. Today I'm going to be talking about Rose, the first episode in the revival of the show from 2005. You'll see that I've posted 6 highlight episodes, mini episodes that talk about the different stages in this show. And you'll notice that all of those episodes add up to about 15 minutes and essentially tell the plot aspect of the story. There's some aspects that have been missed out. There's a bit of characterization and a bit of exposition which has been lost in that translation. But it shows you how you can turn an episode that was about 45 minutes on television, you can actually boil it down to about 15 minutes of actual plot, which was a little bit surprising when I actually did that edit to try to work that out. What were the actual core elements of the plot? About a third, I would say, about a third of the show. This episode was special because it was reviving a show, but it was also introducing the companion and introducing the character of the Doctor to a new audience. So it had a lot of character work to do, and it did it very well. So what I'm going to do is just talk about those little 6 little acts, I guess you could call them, by way of picking apart how this particular story worked. And some of this might be applicable to other episodes which have introduced new companions. It will be interesting to compare with another episode such as the 11th Hour to see if there's similar sorts of things going on there. So let's just talk through what the 6 acts are that I've identified. These will correspond directly to the 6 mini episodes, highlight episodes that I've posted here. So Act 1 is all about introductions. It introduces the character of Rose, it introduces the threat, and it introduces the Doctor. So Rose, the companion, meets the Doctor and gets a little insight into this strange world that the Doctor inhabits. And you'll note that in that act, what happens is that the Doctor pushes her away. He says, it's dangerous. You go back to eating your beans on toast. I'm risking my life here. So the Doctor actually pushes her out, literally outside. She is an outsider here. So she's had a glimpse into that dangerous world of the Doctor, that secret world where there's this war going on that no one knows about, that he's fighting alone. But ultimately she is still an outsider at the end of that act. And then we move on to Act 2, which I would call a discovery act. The threat becomes more personal here. The companion is actually threatened in her own home. She's attacked there, and you get a little bit of exposition. The Doctor tells her some things. She's moving from being an outsider towards being an insider, but she's still not there yet. She's still an outsider. At the end of this act, the Doctor still pushes her away and says, "Now forget me, Rose Tyler." And she does start to walk away. And then we've got the TARDIS dematerializes. She sort of comes back, and there's a moment there where she decides to investigate further. And she goes and she meets Clive, and she discovers this a bit more about this strange world of the Doctor, and a bit more of the mystery about who the Doctor is. So ultimately, the companion here, Rose, she still is an outsider at this point, but she has made a decision now. It's a decision point here for her as a character, that she's going to try to investigate some more. We then have the plot intervene to raise the stakes. So in Act 3, we see that her boyfriend, Mickey, has been now replaced by an Auton. And this sort of prompts this whole scene where she runs around and eventually decides to run inside the TARDIS. It's at this point that she becomes an insider. She becomes a companion to the Doctor at some level. She's still not quite there yet. She gets an explanation from the Doctor.
Right. Where do you want to start?
The inside's bigger than the outside?
Yes.
It's alien.
Yeah.
Are you alien?
Yes. Is that all right?
Yeah.
Let's call the TARDIS, this thing.
Did they kill Mickey? Is he dead?
Oh, I didn't think of that.
You pulled off his head. They copied him and you didn't even think. And now you're just going to let him melt.
Melt?
And we start to get a lot more explanations of what's going on, setting up the second half of the episode.
Mickey, I'll have to tell his mother he's dead and you just went and forgot him again. You were right, you are alien.
Look, if I did forget some kid called Mickey...
Yeah, he's not a
it's
kid.
because I'm busy trying to save the life of every stupid ape blundering about on top of this planet, all right?
All right.
Yes, it is.
And you can see that this decision moment when she runs inside the TARDIS, she discovers some new things. But you can start to see this real dynamic going on where the companion, as a companion, she's there to humanize the story. The Doctor, you can see, has his eyes on a bigger prize. He's trying to fight this global threat. But the companion acts in the story to humanize this. You can see this when she objects to the Doctor just letting Mickey's Auton head melt. You know, she's there to actually make us care and remind us about the characters who we know, who we've been introduced to as an audience. So she's there really to humanize it, to make it real at a small level, to bring us back to the characters we actually have been introduced to. Whereas the Doctor is fighting this bigger war, and so he's got, in some sense, bigger things on his mind. And we've seen that dynamic many times in the show. You can think of season 8's Peter Capaldi's episode "Mummy on the Orient Express," where it's made very explicit that he's got to act in the best interests of not just any individual person, but of everyone. And that creates this tension between him and the companion, because the companion is very focused on the very human world of trying to save individual lives. And the Doctor sometimes has to make some hard decisions in order to protect everyone. And that, I think, in essence, is a core component of what made this revival of the show really work. That teasing out of that tension between the companion and the Doctor. So it's on display here in this moment. And so Rose becomes a bit of an insider here. She's still not fully a companion, but she starts to get information about what's going on. But you can also see that tension starting to become apparent. Now, Act 4 is where we have the rising threat. They go and they meet the threat face to face, the thing controlling this invading force. And by the end of this act, all hell breaks loose. This is an act of rising tension. Things get worse and worse until right at the end, the storm clouds break and we start to see a pitched battle begin. Now this is essentially this is about making the threat real, and it's about rising tension there. It's really at the next act, Act 5, where we have that pitched battle. The tension actually stays high for a while. It doesn't immediately reduce. We actually have the tension remaining high at that point as the battle unfolds. And the point at which it changes, the inflection point, is where the companion steps up and decides to help. And it's when the companion decides to help the Doctor. That's actually the moment where things change. And that's where we start to get the upbeat music, and that's where another decision point for the companion is reached. And that ultimately allows the Doctor, or in this case really the companion, to save the day. And so essentially this is a moment of high tension and ultimately falling tension just at the end. Moving on to the final act here, we have Act 6. I'm going to call this the calling. It's sort of the denouement of the show. It's the falling action. Things have been resolved, but we still need to address what's happened in this episode. We still need to ask some questions and go over things. And in particular, this is another decision point for the companion. This is where Rose is asked to join the Doctor, and she rejects the call. And she starts to walk away. And then the Doctor comes back, tells her that it's also a time machine, and that's when she accepts the call. So it's both a rejection of the call, then ultimately an acceptance of the call. And it's really at that moment that she truly becomes a companion for the rest of the series. You don't find out why she accepts that call, actually, until much later in the season. But you can see that there's a number of decision points throughout that story, and they're interwoven with the plot. They're not simply character moments that happen separately to the plot. They're woven into these core moments in the plot. And there are many decision points for her to make. In Act 1, she walks away. Act 2, she decides to investigate. Act 3, she runs into the TARDIS. Act 4, she's hand in hand with the Doctor, running to face and to meet the threat. Act 5, she decides to help the Doctor. And Act 6, she rejects the call and then accepts the call. So this really is correctly named. This is about Rose. It's about her character, and it's about the decisions that she makes to and the journey that she goes on to go from an outsider to an insider and to ultimately become a companion. And so this is a textbook episode. It's fantastically well written, but I hope that helps sort of tease out what makes the revival work, and why this particular episode is a really good introduction for a companion, and also an introduction from her point of view into who this Doctor is and the strange and dangerous world that he inhabits. And I hope that also tells you a little bit about the dynamic that really works in the show, about what makes the show tick. It is all about that dynamic and that tension between the Doctor and the companion. Thanks for watching. I'm Dr. Howe. I'll talk with you later. Bye.